This is a little disturbing. Maybe it's to be expected. PBS Frontline interviewed a woman from Texas. She wants as to why she opposes Section 8 low-income housing. And in her neighborhood, this is classic NIMBYism. Maybe it's like Ninky is like not in my country. I don't know how to do that. Go ahead.
Some residents voiced concerns about traffic, others about overcrowding in their schools.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And some were worried about having low-income housing in their neighborhood.
Why did you pick this spot?
Nicole Humphrey is a local opponent of the development.
What is your concern when it comes to Section 8 and low income?
The lifestyle, I feel like, goes with Section 8 is usually working single moms or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water. And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not, it's just not people who are, I guess, of the same class as us, which sounds bad, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Some people would say, look, they maybe have not had the opportunities they've had. Their kids are not going to have the opportunities that your kids are going to have in this neighborhood.
Right.
Can they share in that?
The problem with that is I hear a lot of the unfair of, we haven't been given this or not that, or we haven't been afforded things that you might have been afforded. I don't look at multimillionaires and think, why don't I have a yacht? Why don't I have a private jet? It's a mindset, I feel like.
Do you think that you maybe are stereotyping the folks?
I totally am, 100%. It's not. It works both ways. I'm definitely not a racist and I'm not bigot, but I think I hold a little bit of a stigma against people who are different. We don't want nomads. We don't want people who don't have roots. I just don't want that to be what my community is about.
Wow. And she's young, too. I mean, I know people exist like this who are young, but it's I was expecting something a little bit different. I mean, this is the kind of thing where it's sometimes when people express views like this about low-income housing, I feel like sometimes it's appropriate to assume a level of ignorance, or a level of being influenced by scaremongering. But this woman is just nakedly no, I just don't want poor people here. But
it's so weird to that sort of that paradox of some measure of self-awareness. I know this sounds bad, but I don't mean it that way.
The laughter, when she explodes in laughter because she's realizing what she's saying is just horrendous, is
well, it must be
bizarre
the
to
look
watch.
on the face of the woman interviewing her going what are you?
I mean, I think there's some internal morality trying to fight out there too. You cannot be saying this. And by the way, she's saying, I'm not a bigot, but I just behave exactly the way a bigot does around people who are different than me.
I just
that's bigotry.
Almost defined it. I hold a stigma towards those who are different from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's got to be close to the textbook definition.
I mean, you would think, I really, honestly, I have such a hard time sort of wrapping my head around this. That she has a self-awareness. And what I'm saying is, I know sounds horrible, right. but it's actually not that what she's saying sounds horrible. It's what she's saying is horrible.
It is horrible.
It is horrible. And it is, the problem is not that you're articulating it. The problem is all the other things that are involved with that. And it's I could see, on one hand, I'd be what? I mean, if I felt that and I felt I really need to tell the people on the TV about it, right? Which I think is an interesting combination. I mean, because on one hand, she clearly does not understand why that's so bad, right? I mean, otherwise, she knows that it sounds bad, but she doesn't understand why it is bad.
Right. Yeah.
And you could, if she understood why it is bad, maybe she would have the sophistication to say look, I don't think the problem is going to be solved by public housing. The problem is going to be solved by a much bigger investment on the part of the public. Therefore, I need to see not just public housing for people, but we need to see a whole investment into communities so that other communities can be just as good as one. Like she needs to be arguing like separate but equal.
Right, yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
But then she comes in with like, look, I'm not a millionaire. Now, I don't know. That house looked pretty nice. I'm not a millionaire, and I don't sit around fretting about, millions. So they don't have a right to be like, I need housing. I need healthcare. I need food. Like
I need a well-funded school.
Yeah. There's no concept of necessities. It's just like, I'm not doing as well as they are, and I can live with that. They have to live with that. They're not doing as well as I am. But she totally misses like.
Yeah, like that's part of the myth of like that everyone in America is like, it's all just like levels of relative comfort. It's like, oh, like sure they're poor, but they must be comfortable, right? Like they must be comfortably poor. Like,
they have a big screen TV.
Right. Yeah.
I've been by those houses. They have air conditioners.
Right.
I think part of the confusion is that like, this is how the country is set up. She's like, so I know this sounds bad to elaborate, but if it's so bad, why have we just inherited the system that was set up explicitly to stratify people by class and race like this, right? like she's confronting the system versus the what we say is, ideally what America should be.
I guess to a certain extent too, I would want to know, like, you say it sounds bad. Why? Why does it sound bad?
Yeah.
Like interrogate that notion of like why she thinks it sounds bad.
I don't know. I can understand, as someone who's done like field interviews like this, when you get someone to say something so insane, they might retract it, which, they can't, but you kind of don't want to play your hand too far.
No, I understand that. I understand that. I've done some of that.
How bad can you make yourself look right now, ma'am? Please, let's just ride this.
Well, yeah. I might even like, I don't know. I would be really interested to like just turn the camera off. Well, actually secretly keep it on. But turn the camera off and say like, but what, like, it sounds bad, but why does it sound bad to you?
Right.
And how is that different from actually what is actually happening?
This is where like the method of, I think like a certain degree of social shaming is like necessary, where it's like, there are some positions like just blanketly and automatically being opposed to public housing in your neighborhood. Like it just has to be one of those positions where it automatically gets you shit from your neighbors. It's like, it's got to become that, where it's like, because I think it's one of those things where people, like, it is such a bigoted position to hold, but it's one of the last positions where it's like people still seem to feel comfortable holding it, where it's like they still feel like, where like people don't seem to feel the need to like obscure that position,
right? Like
other blatantly bigoted positions,
Right. And I think the value of that is, I think the value of that is to sort of disempower them in these sort of like local struggles, frankly. I mean, it's basically, that is like, people say like, oh, sometimes you hear on the left, like you shouldn't moralize in that way.
Right.
Right. I mean, I guess unless it is a question of class. I mean, sometimes that goes back and forth, but the value of moralizing and shaming in that respect is because it's all a struggle of power, and it's an effective tool. Social shaming is an effective tool in terms of promoting change.
And honestly, like,
in the proper way.
It works in the opposite way too, like, and has historically, like, to me, this is like no different. Like, it's really no different in essence than like, the first Black family being kicked out of the Levittown suburbs because of just like the unbridled, like, unacceptance and rage of their neighbors, Right. It's like, the attitudes of people, living in these communities like matter, and like, like forcing them to change matters. I
agree.
Because it's their attitudes that's going to make the lives of low-income people miserable ultimately.
I just want to point out also it's a mindset after saying, I don't care about billionaires. Yeah, it's a class stratified caste system mindset, basically.
Right.